the two big nominations at the Golden Globes, nominated for Best Film Drama, and it's also got James Cameron, the man that brought about all those technical innovations for the first film and has done it again. It was seen with Avatar 2. He is nominated for Best Director. And in the Golden Globes, you don't get the technical categories. It's about acting and film. So when it comes to the Oscars, this might well be the film that we're saying, it is not got the most nominations.
Key day across parts of central eastern England, that drifting a bit further northward. A lot of sunshine elsewhere, a few wintry showers in eastern Northern Ireland, some of the very far north of Scotland, but for most it is cold out there. Some not getting above freezing all day long, temperatures dropping again this evening, and with it a significant ice risk, especially when seeing the wintriest of the weather through the past couple of days. So into tonight, still that ice risk, a few snow flurries, Midlands into northwest England, limited amount of impacts, 1 or 2 to the eastern Northern Ireland, but more especially in the very far north of Scotland, drifting around in some strengthening winds. But minus 15 again possible in Aberdeenshire. In the southeast, a colder night tonight, we'll see some clearing skies and some hazy sunshine for tomorrow. Now tomorrow the snow is going to be mainly across northern Scotland, drifting its way down through eastern areas, could make it into the northeast of England by the time it hits tomorrow evening. A lot of dry weather around, a lot of sunshine hazy across the south, another very cold day, but a little bit of mild air I mentioned, that's this rain here, getting close to the southwest later in the day and into the night. The thing is pushing to colder air, and that could give some more significant snow across parts of Devon, Cornwall, Somerset, Dorset, especially as we go through Tuesday night and into Wednesday morning. Could be a bit further south, we'll keep an eye on that for you, but once that clears through, midweek onwards, the northerly winds are back, meaning better visibility, snow mainly to the northeast of Scotland, and to a limited degree in the northeast of England. However, through Wednesday, winds will strengthen, 60-70 mile an hour, blizzards across Orkney, Shetland and the north of the mainland. A lot of dry and bright weather elsewhere, but with that wind, don't even think about those as your temperatures, it's going to feel much, much colder in the wind. And then to see the weekend, we've got that northeast to begin with, still some further wintry flurries in the north. This is what will bring the more significant change on Sunday, and you can follow all those changes where you live on BBC Weather App.
The BBC has something for everyone.
How about a full throttle tango or
A high-ranking girl police officer. I'm a stop secret.
what about
Banger after banger. There's more to that.
the BBC is
A unique experiment.
it's a bridge between us.
Kind of a common ground.
The BBC.
There's something that belongs to all of us. Every one of us.
Hello, good afternoon. This is BBC News with me, Ben Brown. Our headlines at 4 o'clock. West Midlands Police have confirmed that 3 boys, aged 8, 10, have died after being pulled from an icy lake near Solihull over the weekend.
Some of the officers went in waist deep. One of my officers was trying to punch through the ice to actually rescue the children themselves.
Snow, ice and fog are causing widespread travel disruption in parts of the UK, with hundreds of motorists and air travelers stranded. The government is due to meet the Royal College of Nursing leadership tonight. It comes just days before nurses' planned walkout over pay.
We'll continue to listen to colleagues' concerns, not just about pay, but about many other issues affecting the working lives of those in the NHS. We'll work with them to make those improvements in a range of areas, from working conditions to patient safety.
New figures show the British economy shrank by 0.3% between August and October, with the country expected to be in recession by the end of the year. And in sport, England's cricketers clinched an historic Test series win in Pakistan, first in that country for 22 years. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to BBC News. West Midlands Fire Service has called it a tragedy beyond words. 3 boys, aged 8, 10 and 11, have died after falling into a frozen lake in Solihull in the West Midlands. They were rushed to hospital after being pulled from the water at Babbs Mill Park. The 4th boy, who is 6, remains in a critical condition in the hospital. While police are continuing to search the lake, but they say they have no information that other children may be missing. Our correspondent Phil Mackey sent us this report, and it does contain some elements that viewers may find distressing.
Just after 2:30 yesterday, 4 children had fallen through the ice. Police, paramedics and firefighters were all called and did all they could to save them. It was a massive emergency response. Searching to see if there were any others, checking into the night. All the boys were pulled out and taken to hospital. All were suffered arrests. Today we had confirmation in the news everyone feared. 3 have died, the other, aged 6, is still critical in hospital.
We've worked very closely with our colleagues in West Midlands Fire Service and also Western South. This has been a real joint effort. It's incredibly sad that we do not have any better news for you today regarding the incident.
The boys' deaths are a tragedy beyond words, and the thoughts and heartfelt sympathies of everyone here at West Midlands Fire Service with their families, friends, and the wider community at this distressing time.
They're still not sure if there's anyone in the water, as initial reports suggested there may have been 5 or 6 children playing on the ice. Compared to the rescue operation that was going on yesterday afternoon and last night, things have scaled back considerably, but you can still see police officers wading through the ice-cold water as part of the recovery operation in appalling conditions. The news has affected everyone. Many of people have come to make those stress.
As mothers and as grandparents, you can imagine how last night went for that, for that family and their parents and as a mother. Like, it's not something you try not to think about.
The Prime Minister has sent his condolences via the local FD, both of whom have children of a similar age.
Since I've heard the news, like many people, I've been in shock. It's a great tragedy. This is a really close-knit community, and to hear about children going through and just all of it, the shock and anguish is very real.
The children's school, a short walk from where the tragedy happened, was shut today. Grief remains the overwhelming emotion. The request is about safety, but the children are fully aware of the dangers of ice.
Yesterday's incident is a stark reminder to us all of the dangers of open water, especially during winter months. Frozen lakes, ponds, canals and reservoirs can look picturesque, but they can be lethal. And there are no greater warnings of this than yesterday's tragic event.
Phil Mackey, BBC News, King's
Let's get the latest then from our correspondent Nick Garnett, who's at the lake. Is it any clearer this evening what happened? Because as we were hearing there, this is a tragedy beyond words, such a really harrowing story.
Are being told by one person who lives nearby that there's been talk of going down, the children have been talking about going down to be at the lake and to play around by the lake for 24 hours beforehand. It has been in that sense, between themselves, slightly planned when they went down. As you know now, we all know now, the tragedy struck when 4 of the children went out onto the lake and the ice cracked underneath them. It had been snowing during the morning. That had actually raised the temperature slightly, which has started a thaw, and that was what thinned out the ice and led to this tragedy. Now behind me, you can see some of the lake. Throughout the day, there have been officers in there from the Fire and Rescue Service who've been wading through dry suits, scouring the bottom, checking to see if anybody was still underneath the water. It now looks as though there weren't any other children involved. Indeed, the police have said that they've got no cases of missing children in the area at all. Nobody's reported their children missing. So the hope is that there's nobody in there, and that police search has now been scaled back to try and make sure that things can start down there to move away. But what's happened up here is that people who live nearby have been coming to pay their respects. And if we'll cross across the road now and go over to where the floral tributes have been laid. Now there are balloons here, there are messages of love and support. One says you'll forever be in our dreams, another one, and our thoughts and prayers, another one says sleep well with your children. There are teddy bears here, balloons, candles being lit, and this is now the focus of the people living here. Now you can see as well the house behind it, how close the houses are to the lake, and the children will come from this area and just cross one single road and come down to a lake that's usually used for walking their dogs and for playing around, and for 364 days a year is a peaceful, happy, safe place. But then this tragedy happened.
Yeah, Nick, and thank you very much indeed. As I say, such a really harrowing tragedy. Nick, thank you very much indeed for bringing such an information. And also just some breaking news to bring you on the rail strikes in the last couple of minutes. Members of the RMT Rail Union on Network Rail have rejected the latest pay offer. They will go ahead with 2 48-hour strikes this week. So that's just coming into us from the RMT Union. Just to repeat that, the RMT Union on Network Rail rejecting the latest pay offer and going ahead with their 2 48-hour strikes this week. The Met Office says the current freezing temperatures are likely to remain in place for the rest of this week. Snow, ice and fog have led to severe disruption on the trains, drivers on the roads, and more than 100 flights have been cancelled as well, with London airports the worst affected. Here's our correspondent, Duncan Kennedy.
This is what many side roads in southeast England have looked like today. Plenty of others have been completely blocked. We came across this young driver near Paddock Wood in Kent. His tyres caught a patch and he hit a concrete post. He was shaken but unhurt. For others here, it's been a morning of energy-sapping clear-ups. Dean, what do you make of the conditions this morning?
They're great for children, but they're not the best for businesses and community.
Every kind of travel system has been hit by the snow. Dozens of cars were abandoned on the M25 in Hertfordshire. Some motorists were stranded for more than 12 hours.
I've never seen snow like it. As soon as I hit the M25, it was just chaos. There were many different parts where we were just stranded. We didn't see any really emergency services. Nobody can get through.
The critters and snowplows were out in Gloucestershire, as parts of the east and southwest were also carpeted by the snow. Major airports have seen more than 100 flights cancelled, not only here at Heathrow, but Stansted, Gatwick and Luton as well, hitting pre-Christmas travel plans for thousands of passengers.
Trains have also been badly affected, especially in rural places like here in Kent, where commuter and other services have been severely reduced.
Euston is just one of the stations full of people rearranging their plans. Southeastern, Southwestern, Southern and Greater Anglia all report severe disruption, just like London Underground services. In East Sussex, the Christmas spirit was flowing. 40 people thought to take refuge in a pub. Therein, Burwash made up hot drinks and mattresses amid the log fires.
So we trekked here, 2 miles, a 2 mile journey from the other pub, and sure enough, Pauline was and her team us were looking arms and made hot food, hot drinks, and said to be all safe.
The effects of this weather will play out across clear-ups, disruption and some chaos for many hours to come.
Duncan Kennedy with that report. Let's find out more about what's in store for us weather-wise. Here's our weather presenter, Matt Taylor, with me in the studio. Matt, good to see you. So first of all, any more snow on the way?
Well, but not in those areas that got badly affected through yesterday where all the travel impacts were. The main focus is still during the rest of the working week, likely to be across the north and east of Scotland, potentially the northeast England as well. The main focus showers, so snow amounts won't vary. A strong winter that's going to blow it around and make it feel especially cold. Could it change it?
This is such an icy blast to go through. Where does it come from?
We've seen a big change in changing weather patterns. It's been such a warm year so far. What we've now seen is an air high pressure build across Greenland, and that's in place. Winds come all the way from the Arctic, and because it's sat in place for this length of time, it's just a continuous flow. And that should continue through this week. Last night we saw coldest conditions in the UK since the start of 2021, so it's over 2 years. Minus 16 and parts of Aberdeen, 15. And even this afternoon, the same spot, Braemar, Balmoral, being kept above around minus 9 degrees. So it's that widespread cold affecting most of us. And of course, what you see when you shout ice is that added insult to injury as well.
The big question,
certainly through much of this working week, we've got some mild air trying to get close by to tomorrow. Could bring a little bit of snow to Southern counties. Change could come on Sunday, but not before though. We see some more snow before things turn back to rain. So it does look like a big weather pattern change back to normal conditions for December from Sunday onwards.
One of the reasons it feels so cold is because it felt so warm right up until, well, it's in November actually, unseasonably. But there was talk about this being the warmest year for a long, long time, maybe on record. Has this cold snap sort of lowered the average, so it's not going to be the warmest year?
It'll lower the average through this month, but we would be significantly lower for the full month. So being on target for our warmest year on record. That is just how warm it's been. Autumn was the third warmest on record. Every single month has been above average temperatures. So we do need a cold spell. It looks like I said, so this weekend onwards, so that we have more of lower temperature should come to an end.
Oh, and Matt, thank you very much indeed for that. That's Matt Taylor forecasting. And of course, you can keep up to date with all the latest news on the weather by taking a look at our live page online. You'll find up-to-date advice and details on today's travel disruption. There's quite a lot of that disruption. Quite a lot of industrial disruption as well. The government is due to meet the Royal College of Nursing leadership tonight. Now that comes just days before the nurses' planned walkout over pay. Well, senior ministers are attending a meeting of the COBRA Emergency Committee in Whitehall right now. They're going to be discussing the government's response to that wave of industrial action, and they're expected to suggest using the military civil service to cover border force staff in particular. We've already heard that armed forces will be deployed to hospital trusts ahead of the forthcoming ambulance staff strike. But the government warns there will still be serious disruption, nursing strikes among them, and in the last hour or two, we've heard from the Cabinet Secretary retreating on to question the government on their preparedness for these strikes.
So instead of taking responsibility for their failure, they want to use nurses and paramedics as scapegoats to avoid the blame. It is a disgusting plan, it is a dangerous plan, and it is a plan that will not work. Because the public know the power to stop these strikes is in their hands. And if they fail to act now, patients will never forgive them. How many operations have already been cancelled? How does the minister expect those on the waiting list to feel if their operations are cancelled because of their gross negligence? Can he tell patients which services will be impacted if these strikes go ahead? And isn't the Secretary of State embarrassed at COBRA today, asking the army to come in to clean up their mess? It's even at its last minute, Mr. Speaker. It is not too late to prevent these strikes from going ahead. Perhaps the minister can tell us whether the meeting with the RCN later today will involve discussions on pay, and if not, why not? Because that's all it takes. Just a few minutes or a few hours of talk can avoid strike action. Why won't they do it?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the fact is that Labour is all over the place when it comes to strikes. They criticise ministers while admitting the union's pay demands are unaffordable. Now, the gentleman opposite and his party leader are too tied to their union paymasters to be on the side of patients. Now, he knows, Mr. Speaker, he knows that we have an independent pay review body, and it's important that both sides respect that independent body. An independent body, Mr. Speaker, whose recommendations we accepted this year's increase in full, meaning that over 1 million NHS staff have been given at least a £1,400 increase in their pay. And Mr. Speaker, that is on top of a 3% pay rise last year at a time when pay was frozen across the wider public sector.
To our health editor, UK News looking now, because RCN, Royal College of Nursing representatives, are going to be meeting the health secretary tonight. Now, is that a breakthrough? Is that significant? Do you think the fact there are going to be some sort of talks between the government and the Royal College of Nursing?
It's certainly interesting, Ben. I understand that the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, covering England, got in touch with the Royal College of Nursing over the weekend to invite them to come in for a discussion, but there were no preconditions set. Equally, there was no concession of anything, and the RCN view is that they would take up this invitation, and they are meeting early this evening. On paper, they're quite a long way apart still. RCN say that Steve Barclay has been prepared to talk about everything except pay, therefore they're getting nowhere, so they've got to go ahead with the strikes. Steve Barclay has said his door's always open. He will talk about terms and conditions, but he won't talk about pay because they go along with the recommendations of the independent pay review body to award 4.75% to many health workers in England, and the local government's taking the same tack. Whereas Royal College of Nursing wanted 5% above RPI inflation, which is now 19%. So we don't know whether there's any move forward yet. We'll have to wait to see the outcome of these talks.
Or maybe there'll be talks about talks. What would the nurses going on strike actually mean in our health system, do you think?
Well, it's all set to happen on Thursday at some hospitals, I know it's all in England, at almost all Welsh health boards and in Northern Ireland. And it's going to affect routine planned treatment and care operations which can be put off. So that will mean quite a lot of disruption for patients. But certainly the notifications to patients of postponements are only just going out, so many won't have heard yet what's going to happen. And there's a lot of detailed negotiation going on at trust and board level between the Royal College of Nursing and local management on what constitutes emergency care, because that will be preserved. The RCN are absolutely keen to get across that if it's an urgent or emergency case, they will be seen in hospitals. But in terms of some of the detail, we're just waiting to see the outcome of those discussions.
Just very quickly, Hugh, a development in terms of health workers in Scotland.
Yes, the Scottish Government's made a higher offer, averaging around 7.5%, and two health unions, Unison and Unite, have balloted their members on it, and they've got a mandate to accept that offer, so no strike action by those unions. We await to hear what the RCN will do in Scotland and the GMB.
Okay, Hugh, thank you very much indeed. That's Hugh Pym, our health editor. Just a quick word about industrial action on the railways. We mentioned it earlier. I'll just repeat this because I know it affects a lot of people. RMT union members at Network Rail have rejected an updated offer, which the organisation Network Rail had described as the best and final offer. So the RMT have rejected that in an electronic referendum. So that's the latest on the railways. And let's talk more widely now about the government's planned response to the wave, really, of industrial action that we are seeing this week. And David Wallace-Lockhart is our political correspondent. And David, there's a meeting, I think it's still underway, is it, of the COBRA Emergency Committee, the government's emergency committee, and they are talking about contingency plans for some of these strikes.
That's right, Ben. So, of course, we know there are many sectors who want industrial action in the days and the weeks ahead, but specifically with two of those sectors, there seems to be government plans to draft in the military and some civil servants to try and ease the pressure that's going to be shown there. So, paramedics, ambulances is one of those areas, the other one is border force. But number 10, I'm keen to say, I think, to stress that this is not the sort of solution that's going to mean that everything then works perfectly. The Prime Minister's official spokesperson saying that there would still be serious disruption when it came to both ambulances and border force, despite the fact that the military would be drafted in. Now, as you mentioned, there's a meeting just now of the COBRA Emergency Committee. That's the group that the government convenes often when there's some sort of pressing problem it has to deal with. So that's going to be chaired by Oliver Dowden. Ongoing currently, he's the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, a position that quite often deals with big issues
issues facing the government, and the relevant ministers from affected departments will also be there. They'll be discussing how the military will be deployed to help deal with some of these pressures. But as I said there, number 10 really stressing that this does not mean the ambulance system, for example, is going to work as it normally does when all the paramedics are at work, because it does not mean there can be like-for-like system there. Government broadly sounding like it wants to hold firm on the idea of increasing any pay offers, saying that they're respecting independent pay bodies and the recommendations made there, warning about the complications that could come with inflation pay rises, which they believe would embed those rising prices we're currently seeing, and saying in the long term that would hurt workers. But of course, we're hearing from the unions that they have members who are really struggling with the rising cost of living they're seeing, and they simply need to see higher pay increases than those currently on the table from the government. But certainly it looks like trying to plug some of the gaps with using the military and some civil servants, not something I'm sure the government will be particularly big fans of doing, and they do seem to be stressing that there will be difficulties ahead this month.
David, thank you very much indeed. Let's talk a bit more then about what the government might do to mitigate some of the effects of this industrial action with Paul Netherton, who's an expert on contingency planning, also former Deputy Chief Constable of Devon and Cornwall Police. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. And well, that Cobra emergency meeting is going on now, and the government looking very hard at how to avoid some of the worst impacts of this industrial action that we're seeing this winter.
Yes, I mean, Cobra is designed so it brings together all the partners, the ministers, all the government departments, and they will go through those plans, identifying where the risks are and what they can do to mitigate them.
What sort of things can they do? You know, obviously we've heard quite a lot of talk about bringing the military, bringing the army, and quite a lot of controversy over that.
Yes, I mean, it's always difficult when you're bringing in military to backfill behind a strike or industrial action. I mean, there's sensitivities around it. The two main things that will be being done at the moment, one is to identify what are the core services, what must continue to operate come what may, and that, as you've already heard just now, is about saving lives, making sure the core services are there, and you know, the ambulance service will continue to deliver those services. It's where they have to stop the additional services, the like to have rather than the must have services. Those will be stopped. Then you've got additional workforce, whether that is from management or from other players within those organisations. And the last resort is then using the military to backfill, and they will be used for things like driving vehicles, moving people around, the non-essential services.
You know, people talk about going back to the winter of discontent in the 70s. I mean, obviously there are differences, but there are similarities in the sense you've got a lot of unions, a lot of workers, either taking or proposing industrial action at the same time. And that imposes a real burden on the national infrastructure, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and one of the key problems of using the military, a lot of the military people who are in, say, the medical units are actually NHS workers. So, you know, they will be conflicted because on one hand they are maybe taking industrial action, but as a military personnel they won't be able to. So you will have those kind of conflicts going on. But yes, it is getting tricky. There are a large number of strikes going on, but there are plans for industrial action. There are plans for emergencies, and of course we're adding things like the weather into that as well at the moment. So the emergency services will be stretched at the moment, and obviously Cobra will be looking across a whole range of issues and identifying what's important and where resources need to be put.
Okay, Paul, good to talk to you. Paul Netherton, expert on contingency planning and former Deputy Chief Constable of Devon and Cornwall Police. New official figures show Britain's economy shrank by 0.3% in the 3 months to the end of October. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, is warning the situation will get worse before it gets any better. With the Office for Budget Responsibility already suggesting the UK is now tipped into recession. Our economics correspondent, Andy Barrett.
In Edinburgh's Morningside district,
Toys galore has been open for more than 40 years. With these, not times of plenty. Because the pound's much weaker than last year and most of the toys are imported, they've been getting more expensive. Some cost so much now that they're no longer worth stocking. It's an affluent area, but even here, there are people in pinch.
Well, firstly, for struggling, because we've seen all costs go up, interest costs, fuel costs, food costs, and yet the wages just haven't kept up. So everything's squeezed. And I think that although they still buy toys for some birthday or Christmas, they might buy maybe a small toy or it might be not the trip to toy shop on Saturday.
The economy, in other words, for all the goods and services that UK produces, grew by 0.5% in October. But that was largely a bounce back from September, which saw a 0.6% fall, largely because of the extra bank holiday for the Queen's funeral. 3 months from August to October showed a 0.3% fall, suggesting that the UK is on course to be officially declared in recession next year.
It's quite clear that with the squeeze that people are experiencing from high inflation, holding back consumer spending, and uncertainty holding back investment, that there will be some form of recession. But it's only as these recessions develop that you can really assess how long they're going to last.
Services for consumers, from restaurants to shops to sports venues, also saw a modest bounce back in October from September. But in the midst of what's predicted to be the tightest squeeze on living standards since the 1990s, they're still 8.9% down on pre-pandemic levels.
These figures confirm that this is a very challenging economic situation here and across the world, and it will get worse before it gets better. But we have a plan with more than half inflation over next year, and if we stay the course, we can get back to strong economic growth that we need.
Activity in manufacturing dropped by 1.8%, and the sector's now been in a slump since the summer of last year. The figures also suggest that the economy produced 4% less electricity and gas in October than the year before. Temperatures higher and prices soaring. Households and firms were heating for an average of only 2.8 days. That was 2 days. That was then. This is now. Andy Verity, BBC News.
Now, the Libyan man suspected of making the bomb that blew up an American plane at the Scottish Channel Lockerbie back in 1988 is due to appear in court in Washington in the next few hours. There hasn't been any official explanation as yet about how Abu Aguila Massoud ended up in American custody. The families of the victims have said that they are very concerned and delighted about this test. Let's get more from our North America correspondent, Normia Iqbal. Normia, tell us more about what we do know about the arrest and this court hearing.
Yes, as you say, he's due to appear in the court behind me in a couple of hours' time. And this comes 2 years after the charges were made against Abu Aguila Massoud. He is accused of being the Lockerbie bomb. He's accused of making the bomb, of setting a timer on the device which exploded in the plane in 1988. But as you say, there are questions about how he got here. So, first of all, the reason why the US thinks that he is their man is because at the height of the Libyan revolution back in 2011, when he was captured, he is said to have confessed to being the Lockerbie bomb. He's confessed to have played a role in that. There are questions about the validity of his confession because lawyers are saying for him, well, actually the confession was extracted at a time when he was in the custody of warlords who had questionable human rights records. And the other thing, as you pointed out, is how he got here. We know that last month he was said to have been kidnapped by a Libyan militia group at his residence in Tripoli, and it was widely speculated then that he was being brought here to the US. But bear in mind, Libya is a country that's still hugely torn by civil war. There are competing governments, there are competing prime ministers. So there's no kind of official extradition agreement. So it's not really clear who negotiated him to be released here. But of course, for many of the families, the American families, the British families, this is a really important moment because they finally, there is going to be accountability for what happened 34 years ago. But there are others. For example, Dr. Jim Swire, his daughter, was killed in Panama, Uxbridge. He believes that the UN should decide where the trial is held, that it should be on neutral territory and not in the US.
All right, Nobia, thank you very much indeed. That's Nobia. Now, we heard from him a little bit earlier on with the latest on the weather. Let's get a full forecast for you now from Matt Taylor. On the cold snap, how much longer is it going to go on, and how low are those temperatures going to go?
Well, they'll go as low as they did last night. I think tonight across some parts, Ben for minus 15, minus 16, and areas of Aberdeenshire, very similar to come tonight. The mist of fog though that we've seen across parts of central southern England, drifting a bit further north. There's a few snow flurries this evening and overnight in the North Midlands, North Wales, North West England. Limited amount of impact. More very significant snow to the north of Scotland, however, and more widespread impact from ice. Temperature this day, temperature around minus 15, minus 16 in the Grampians. Colder night, East Anglia, South East, but here a bright start to tomorrow. Low cloud will be there though for parts of northern England, North Midlands, North Wales. Again, a few isolated light flurries. Heavy snow showers across the north and east of Scotland drift down towards the borders through the day, accompanied by a strong wind, which will just add to the chill. Elsewhere, lighter wind, most have a dry day with some bright conditions, a bit of sunshine, but we will feel colder than even the temperatures there would suggest. The high cloud though drifting across later on, which turns that sunshine haze all into a weather system which will bring rain through the English Channel during Tuesday night. From Tuesday night to Wednesday, that's close enough. Down in Cornwall, Somerset, Dorset, and Hampshire could see some snow. We'll keep you updated.
Matt Taylor there with our latest weather forecast. You're watching BBC News with me, Ben Brown, with our latest news headlines. And West Midlands Police have confirmed that 3 boys aged 8, 10 and 11 have died after being pulled from an icy lake near Solihull over the weekend.
Some of the officers went in waist deep. One of my officers was trying to punch through the ice to actually rescue the children themselves.
Snow, ice and fog are causing widespread travel disruption in parts of the UK, with hundreds of motorists and air travellers stranded. The government's due to meet the leadership of the Royal College of Nursing this evening. It comes just days before a planned walkout by British economy shrank by 0.3% between August and October. The country expected to be in recession by the end of the year. And at this year's Golden Globe nominations, the dark horror Banshees of Inisherin leads the way with 8 nominations, followed closely by the science fiction film Everything Everywhere All at Once with 6 nominations. Right, all those sport for you now, the cricket and the World Cup. Let's go to the BBC Sports Centre and John Ben.
Good afternoon to you. We'll start with that football. Then questions remain over Gareth Southgate's future as England manager following their quarter-final exit against France on Saturday evening. Ollie Foster is in Doha for us. Ollie, we'll get on to the semi-final shortly, but what's Southgate had to say?
Well, I think now more than at any point during his 6 years in charge, Ben, he appears to be in 2 minds as to whether or not to carry on. It's a natural point to reflect on his position after a major championship exit. He's had 3 of them. We heard over the weekend how his emotions always fluctuate, he said, after going out to a major championship, be it the World Cup at the semi-final stage 4 years ago, the European Championship last year at the final stage, or that quarter-final defeat on Saturday to the French. But he also revealed how hard and difficult the last 18 months have been since they lost that Euros final. The criticism he's faced. Remember, they had that awful run in the Nations League leading into this Qatar World Cup. They didn't win in 6. Booed off the pitch over the summer after a 4-0 defeat against Hungary. That really hurts. So he is going to wait and see as to which way his emotions go. There's no doubt that he's got the best record at major championships of any England manager, but just reading the Sundays and seasoned football writers who have been to World Cups long before Gareth Southgate came along, there seems to be a split now as to whether he should carry on. Here is the former FHM, Greg Dyke.
I mean, he's better for the England manager. He's significantly better than anyone has been probably since our fans. Therefore, you've got to say yes. You could say he's not ruthless enough, but then you could also say about someone who's ruthless, yeah, but they don't get over the players at all. I mean, he is clearly a very good national manager, and there's no guarantee we get someone better to replace him.
Right, let's look at the football then. Now, it's a huge semi-finals. Who would have predicted either at the start of the tournament? Tomorrow's seems to be about two players as much as two teams.
Yeah, Luka Modric, the Croatia captain, 37 now, so it will be his last World Cup. What a player he is. And, yeah, Lionel Messi, the other one, the Argentina captain. That's going to be a terrific semi-final, the first of them. Good thing it's at the Lusail Stadium as well, because Argentinian support here in Qatar is huge. Over 40,000 they'll be willing Argentina on. And Lionel Messi, obviously, it's the one trophy he has yet to win. The Argentina boss says that he has been instrumental, not just on the pitch. Yeah, he scored one of the penalties to knock out the Netherlands, didn't he, the other night, but with those younger players, try to loosen them up, say, look, just go back to basics, enjoy it against Croatia. Well, as for the Croatians, yeah, they've been boring everybody again, haven't they? A couple of penalty shootouts, as they did in Russia 4 years ago. And Zlatko Danic, the Croatian manager, he has said, look, we're in a World Cup semi-final. That is the end of the story. He didn't like that line of questioning when they suggested that Croatia were a little bit boring. It won't be a boring semi-final, that one.
Right, definitely not. Ollie, enjoy it. Many thanks indeed for now. On to the cricket then. England have pulled off a stunning victory to win the series against Pakistan. The hosts need only 57 to win with 6 wickets in hand on the 4th day. Saw Shaquille made 94 before he and Mohamed Nawaz fell to the pace bowling of Mark Woodlipton and Ahmed, who took 11 wickets in the match, provided the late counter-punch with the bat, hitting 4 boundaries, but England knocked up the tail to win by 26 runs and take the series with a match to spare. They've only won 2 tests in Pakistan in their history, and now they've so decided not to. And here's what we thought now. More about that.
Thank you very much. Now, with the cold weather and longer nights, it's peak time for using energy, of course. Last night, the National Grid started to prepare some of its contingency plans to help support the network. And with temperatures in the minus figures at the moment, many families will be worrying about rising energy bills, which of course are very, very expensive at the moment. So let's talk about how you can best keep down those energy bills with Rosie Avis, who's partnership and communication leader at Manchester Citizens Advice. Thanks very much for being with us. What is your advice for people who are really feeling the cold this winter as this Arctic snap really blasts through the country? How do they keep their bills down?
So thank you for having me, and essentially this is 5 really straightforward tips that we've come up with in partnership with Nesta, the Climate Change Committee and the Energy Savings Trust. They're really straightforward, quite simple, and a lot of households will be able to use them through the winter to try and reduce their costs. Simple things such as the top thing on the list we have is using your thermostat and your timer settings to really sort of take control of your heating and keep your household between 18 and 21 degrees, and that's best for kind of keeping you healthy and well through the winter.
What about advice on sort of baths and showers? I think the general advice is to have a shower rather than a bath, and a short shower at that.
Yes, absolutely. So we would always say a shower uses less energy than a bath, and if you can, and it's compatible, we recommend getting a water-saving shower head for a water-efficient shower head for your shower, or you could reduce your time in the shower. So the average shower time is around 7 minutes. If you can get it down to 4 minutes, you could save around 90 years.
What about machines like the tumble dryer? That's quite energy intensive, isn't it, in terms of the amount of energy it uses? So is it best best limit the amount of time that you're using things like a tumble dryer?
Yeah, wherever possible, if you've got the option to use an air dryer, like a clothes horse kind of dryer, using that instead of the tumble dryer will help you to save energy. Obviously, what we also need to bear in mind is whether or not your home is well ventilated while you're doing that, just to make sure that we don't then create inconsistency with damp if you're sort of not letting that moist air out of them as well.
And of course, I mean, a lot of this is about insulating homes. It might be too late if you haven't really insulated your home, but in the long term, what is the advice for people on how best to protect themselves from the cold when it does hit?
So obviously we know that a lot of households will sort of hear these tips and feel a little bit worried. We hear it from so many people who are struggling to turn on their heating, to use energy through winter, and so these tips, for example, if you're on a prepayment meter and you can't afford to top up, you're not going to be able to cut back anymore. And as you say there, insulation is really key. Years of insulating homes is really sort of means that we're ill prepared essentially now for a hard winter where the energy prices are high. It's really important that a good plan is put in place for insulating homes in the future to make sure essentially that the government doesn't have to continue subsidising support through the winter.
Okay, Rosie, thank you very much. That's Rosie Avis from Manchester Citizens. Thanks very much for all those tips. Now, I just want to bring you up to date on the rail union, the RMT, because I was telling you earlier that RMT members at Network Rail have rejected the latest pay offer, which had been described as the best and final offer. We've had a response from RMT's Andrew Haynes, Chief Executive, who says the RMT leadership needs to think long and hard about what to do next. Further strike action will cause further misery for the rail industry and for their members who will lose pay. This news is especially frustrating, given that we learned today that colleagues represented by the Unite Union have accepted the very same offer to RMT members. That is the response there from Network Rail. A minute's silence has been held across Jersey and flags on official buildings have been lowered after 5 people died in what is a suspected gas explosion at a block of flats on Saturday. Police are continuing to search for 4 other people who are still missing and warn a recovery operation could take weeks. Sarah spokesman confirmed that an engineer did attend the properties on Friday night and followed standard procedures. Well, our correspondent Hilton.
This is a disaster that has shaken this island community. I think it hit everybody here very hard. It was an enormous explosion that destroyed the small block of flats that stood just up there where the orange arm of that digger now stands. There's very little left of that building, just a pile of rubble which search teams have continued going through because they are still searching for 4 people who are missing. We know that 5 people lost their lives, and the declaration over the weekend was that the search effort would turn into a recovery operation because there was no hope of finding any survivors. Now, this morning, people across the island fell silent at 11 a.m. for a minute. That was respected by people from the emergency services, people who are involved in the search here as well, stopped their work for a moment. People who were working on the harbour here in Jersey paused for a moment. They lined up and bowed their heads in respect, not just of the lives that were lost in this explosion, but of 2 tragedies that have hit the islands this week. A fishing boat sank just a few days ago with the loss of 3 fishermen. So people here on the island have had a lot to deal with in the last week, and there's still a huge clear-up going on here. The explosion was so powerful that even buildings a couple of 100 metres away were affected. There is an investigation going on into the cause of this explosion and whether it could have been prevented too, because the emergency services were called about potential gas leak on Friday night, just hours before that explosion.
Dan Johnson with that report. Now, our latest headlines on BBC News. West Midlands Police have confirmed that 3 boys aged 8, 10 and 11 have died after being pulled from an icy lake near Solihull over the weekend. Snow, ice and fog are causing widespread travel disruption in parts of the UK. Hundreds of motorists and air travel is stranded. The government's due to meet the Royal College of Nursing this evening. It comes just days before a plan Colin, so controversy, just remind us of why the Golden Globes got into so much trouble.
Got into a lot of trouble when an LA Times expose revealed that the Hollywood Foreign Press who vote for the Golden Globes have not had a single black member in 20 years, which seems kind of astounding when this is a body who is to be representing foreign countries who are covering in California. Horrifying. Netflix, Amazon said they would not enter their films in the Golden Globes. Tom Cruise famously handed back 3 Golden Globes that he won because he said he wanted nothing to do with the organisation. When the awards happened this year, there was no one there. It was pretty much just a press release being read out, and it was not shown on TV. So this is all about Golden Globes.
Get back to business as normal, if you like. What are the nominations? Because it sounds that's a great film, Forest and this film is rather, well, very dark, as you said, very funny as well. And by the maker of Three Billboards and also
Yeah, so it's reunited with actor from Uxbridge, Martin Ghana, the director, got Colin Farrell back, Brendan Ruislip. This story about feuding friends in 1920s Ireland and pictures being shot across them. Yeah, it is very dark. It's nominated for the best at the Golden Globes. But yet it's doing so well. 4 nominations in total. Barry Keoghan is also nominated, and Kerry Condon. So 4 Irish nominations there. The film that's done second best is Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it is a difficult film to describe because it is so bonkers. It stars Michelle Yeoh, the Malaysian actress. This mixture of martial arts, sci-fi, dealing in multiverses, hugely entertaining, and it's been rewarded today as well.
Now you mentioned Tom Cruise, Top Gun Maverick. Have they got some nominations?
Tom Cruise handed back his 3 Golden Globes, but he is nominated again this year, not for acting, which was a bit of a surprise, but as one of the producers of Top Gun Maverick. So it's going to be fascinating to see if Tom Cruise says that the Golden Globes have done enough in his eye by adding more than 100 new voters and changing the demographic makeup of who votes. Will he go to the Golden Globes in January? That is a big moment for the Golden Globes. But there is another scandal. One thing they are going to have to deal with is the actor Brendan Fraser, people call him Professor George the Jungle, is nominated for a very different type of role here. He's the Whale, in which he plays a literary professor. He is nominated. He has said ahead of today that if he was nominated, he would not be attending the Golden Globes because in 2003 he has alleged that he was sexually assaulted by a man who went on to be the president of the Golden Globes, the Hollywood Foreign Press, and those allegations have been denied, but he says he has never been apologised to by the Hollywood Foreign Press, and that he is not going to go. So the Golden Globes desperately trying to get things sorted. There they have another high-profile star saying we will not be going to the awards.
Right, let's just talk about a couple of other, well, one film and one TV show actually. Avatar: On the Way of Water. James Cameron back.
Not even out in the US or the UK. There we have Avatar, nominated for 2 big awards. It's up for Best Drama, and it's also up for Best Director for James Cameron. Worth remembering, Avatar is the biggest film of all time at the box office, and the Golden Globes have gone for it today.
And finally, The Crown.
Yeah.
They got some nominations again.
Series 5, and the Golden Globe continues to love The Crown. And Imelda Staunton, who took the role of Queen Elizabeth II, and Jonathan Pryce, who took over the role of Duke of Edinburgh, both nominated, as is Elizabeth Debicki, who is playing Princess Diana. So The Crown is still very much loved by the Golden Globes. The Harry and Meghan, the Netflix series, will be nominated next year.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. All right, Colin, thank you very much indeed. Colin Bassett there, our entertainment correspondent. Now, National Highways, the government body that manages England's major roads, has been defending smart motorways. That's after software failure meant that stranded vehicles were at risk of being driven into. In an interview with Look, the Director of Operations, Duncan Smith, has said there will be more outages. Spencer Stokes.
Smart motorways, roads where the hard shoulder has been removed to create more capacity. Radar, electronic gantry signs and CCTV then added to improve safety. But on October the 26th, that safety net disappeared. A software failure saw staff lose control of the signals on smart motorways for only 4 hours. They couldn't close any lanes with the red X symbol. That's put drivers who had to stop on the motorway at potential risk of being driven into. For the first time, National Highways have spoken about what happened.
So during that period, our ability to set red X's was switched off. That wasn't an ideal situation for us, but it was managed through other mitigating measures like boosted traffic controls on the network.
But it wasn't just switched off and then on again, it was off for nearly 4 hours. That's a long time for it to be down.
Unfortunately, we will bring the system back up again when we experienced some unexpected faults, and that's why the 2 hours turned into more like 4 hours.
The software outage led to outrage from Rotherham's MP Sarah Champion.
Motorists are 100% playing roulette with their lives every time they go on a smart motorway.
The latest data shows that in 2020, conventional motorways with a hard shoulder carried 16% of all traffic and accounted for 4.5% of all fatalities. In comparison, smart motorways carried less traffic, just 3.3%, but were safer, accounting for 0.64% of fatalities. But the figures are disputed, with critics arguing the data needs to simply address whether the absence of a hard shoulder was a factor in the death or it wasn't a factor.
I think it's very difficult to ascertain the decision-making of drivers when there is an instance of hard shoulder as to whether what their behaviour would have been had that hard shoulder been there or not. What I feel personally is that smart motorways provide a level of assurance to me as a motorist that other roads don't.
But that extra level of assurance is only there when the technology works, and it will continue to be switched on for maintenance at quiet times. Drivers aren't told well.
So I will not launch the speed impression that we switch the system off for any other reasons than essential upgrades, and those are absolutely by exception rather than the norm.
Smart motorways remain controversial. Safety data over a 5-year period is being measured before new ones are constructed. National Highways say they are the safest type of road, but drivers remain unconvinced. Spencer Stokes, BBC Up North.
The messaging platform Twitter is relaunching its subscription service for a monthly fee. Users will get a blue tick badge indicating their account has been verified. Mentions will be getting more prominent. People subscribing on Apple devices will have to pay more. The initial launch was suspended after a rash of fake accounts. Now England's World Cup dream may be over after 4 years. But the Three Lions have got a feline friend who's joining them for their sad trip home from Qatar. Dave the Cat has been winning hearts as England's unofficial mascot at the Qatar World Cup. The team had originally promised to adopt the Stray Cat if they won, but they stuck to that plan by bringing him home despite Saturday's quarter-final heartbreak. Well done, Dave the Cat. Well, that was Dave the Cat. Now let's get the weather from Matt, the weather forecast.
Hello. The snow wave had impacts across some southern areas into today, but it's been the cold that's felt more widely. Coldest start to a day since January 2021. Coldest of all, Braemar and Aberdeenshire, -16 as we began the day. So how long this cold spell going to last? We noticed the blue colours remain in force throughout this week. A little blip of milder air very close to the south. That has some impacts tomorrow night, but it isn't until this weekend, especially Sunday, we could see a wholesale pattern change. Out there, back here now though, we've also got to add to the cold, some mist and fog around still lingering. A murky day across parts of central eastern England, that drifting a bit further northward. A lot of sunshine elsewhere, a few wintry showers in eastern Northern Ireland, some in the very far north of Scotland, but for most it is cold out there. Sun not getting above freezing all day long, temperatures dropping again this evening, and with it significant ice risk, especially since we've seen the wintries of the weather through the past couple of days. So into tonight's got that ice risk. A few snow flurries, Midlands into northwest England, limited amount of impacts. 1 or 2 to the east of Northern, but more especially in the very far north of Scotland, drifting around in some strengthening winds. But minus 15 again possible in Aberdeenshire and East Anglia, South East, a colder night tonight. We'll see some clearing skies and some hazy sunshine for tomorrow. Now tomorrow the snow is going to be mainly across northern Scotland, drifting its way down through eastern areas, could make it into the northeast of England by the time it hits tomorrow evening. A lot of dry weather around, a lot of sunshine hazy across the south, another very cold day, but that little blip of mild air I mentioned, that's this rain here, getting close to the southwest later in the day and into the night. The thing is, that's going to push into colder air, and that could give some more significant snow across parts of Devon, Cornwall, Somerset, Dorset, especially as we go through Tuesday night and into Wednesday morning. Could be a bit further south, we'll keep an eye on that for you, but once that clears through, midweek onwards, the northerly winds are back, meaning better visibility, snow mainly to the northeast of Scotland, and to a little degree in the northeast of England. However, through Wednesday, winds will strengthen, 60-70 mile per hour, blizzards across Orkney, Shetland, and the north of the mainland. A lot of dry and bright weather elsewhere, but with that wind, don't even think about those as your temperatures, it's going to feel much, much colder in the wind. And then to see the weekend, we've got that northerly to begin with, still some further wintry flurries in the north. This will bring a more significant change on Sunday, and you can follow all those changes where you live on BBC Weather.
Morning. Come and have a seat. Now, of course, I'm not going to go easy on you. There are some really big questions we've got to try and get answers to this evening. But I'll be fair, and we just want to hear what you've got to say. So, should we get on with it? Join me to hear from the biggest names inside and outside politics.
Sunday with Laura Kunsberg. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
People are travelling again, heading back out on the road and rediscovering their wanderlust. Exploring new destinations and cultures, making fresh friends, and creating memories that will last a lifetime.
That's why, at the Travel Show, we're expanding our horizons too. And wherever we go, we want you to come with us. Make for an awful lot of excess baggage, but we think you're worth it.
The Travel Show. Watch now on BBC iPlayer.
BBC News, I'm Clive Myrie. Our top stories for you. West Midlands Police confirmed 3 boys aged 8, 10 and 11 have died after being pulled from an icy lake near Solihull, the West Midlands.
Some of the officers went in waist deep. One of my officers was trying to push through the ice to actually rescue the children themselves.
Snow, ice and fog caused widespread travel disruption in parts of the UK, with hundreds of motorists and air travellers stranded. Members of the RFT union working at Network Rail reject the latest pay offer and will go ahead with 2 48-hour strikes this week. The Health Secretary is due to meet the Royal College of Nursing tonight. It comes days before nurses plan walkouts over pay.
We'll continue to listen to colleagues' concerns, not just about pay, but about many other issues affecting the working lives of those in the NHS who work with them to make those improvements in a range of areas, from working conditions to patient safety.
Iran says it has publicly hanged a 23-year-old man, a second execution linked to recent anti-terror. And this year's Golden Globe nominations have been announced. That our comedy The Banshees of Inisherin leads the way with 8 nods, followed closely by the science fiction film Everything Everywhere All at Once with 6. Wow. Good afternoon and welcome to BBC News. West Midlands Fire Service reporting a tragedy. The
beyond words. 3 boys, aged 8, 10 and 11, have died after falling into a frozen lake in Solihull in West England. They were rushed to hospital after being pulled from the water at Boundsmill Park. The 4th boy, who's 6, remains in a critical condition. Police are continuing to search the lake, but they have no information that other children may be missing. Our correspondent Phil Mackey presents this report that some viewers may find distressing. Just after 2:30 yesterday, 4 children had fallen through the ice. Police, paramedics and firefighters were all called to do all they could to save them. There was a massive emergency response. The search to see if there were any others continued into the night. 4 young boys were pulled out and were taken to hospital. All had suffered cardiac arrests. Today we had confirmation of the news everyone feared. 3 have died, the other, aged 6, is still critical in hospital.
We've worked very closely with our colleagues in West Midlands Fire Service and also in West Midlands Ambulance Service, and this has been a real joint effort. It is incredibly sad that we do not have any better news for you today regarding yesterday afternoon's incident.
The boys' deaths are a tragedy beyond words, and the thoughts, heartfelt sympathies of everyone here at West Midlands Fire Service with their families, friends, and the wider communities at this distressing time.
We're still not sure if there's anyone in the water. The report suggested there may have been 5 or 6 children playing on the ice. Compared to the rescue operation that was going on yesterday afternoon and last night, things have scaled down considerably, but you can still see police officers wading through the ice-cold water as part of the report. The news has affected everyone here, and many of whom have had to pay their respects.
As of, mothers and as grandparents, you can imagine how last night went for that, for that family and their parents and as mother. It's not something you have to, you try not to think about.
The Prime Minister has sent his condolences via the local MP, both of whom have children of a similar age.
Since I've heard the news, like many people, I've been shocked. It's a great tragedy. This is a really close-knit community, and to hear about children playing on the ice and falling through, and just all of it, the shock and anguish is very real.
Children's school, a short walk from where the tragedy happened, was shut today. Grief remains the overwhelming emotion. There are questions about safety, but children are fully aware of the dangers of playing on ice.
Yesterday's incident was a stark reminder to us all of the dangers of open water, especially during the winter months. Frozen lakes, ponds, canals and reservoirs can look picturesque, but they can be lethal. And there are no greater warnings of this than yesterday's tragic events.
Phil Mackey, BBC News, Kingsales.
Our correspondent Nick Garnett is at the lake now, in the West Midlands. And I just want to check, are the police still wading through that freezing water? Is there still a sense that there may be something that they'll find?
No, that's been stepped down now. I think the police realise now they've been checking the missing children logs, they've been checking any calls that have come into the store, and they've been told that there's nobody missing. And so that police operation has been, and rescue operation has been stepped back. It's also pitch black and it's incredibly difficult for them to operate in conditions freezing cold here. It is such an absolute tragedy this. Over one shoulder is the lake 100 metres away to my left, and just a few metres over to my right is the housing estate, full of children who've been preparing for Christmas, have been playing around at the weekend in what was really a winter wonderland. They've been playing in the snow, the ice, they'd even been planning to go down to the lake and play down there, and yet this tragedy happened. It's normally a place where 364 days a year it's perfect. There's a walk around it, there's where you take your dogs and you go and play, and then transformed into this awfulness. Much of the lake is still covered by ice, and today, as well as the officers wading through, checking what's on there underneath the water using special cameras, there's also been police boats, rescue service boats, and they have been breaking through the ice to try and see what was there. Now, as you can see behind me tonight, what's happening tonight is being made, and that has happened all through the day, and I really think that it will continue right the way through this evening.
Sure. Thank
Okay, Nick, thank you. Nick, joining us, Lee Hurd from the Royal Lifesaving Society. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. First of all, what do you make of the
I think first of all, just our condolences to the families and the staff